Hello from the 2019 Global Legal Hackathon in New York City, New York. My name is Laurence Colletti, and I'm the host for today's show. And right now I'm sitting myself in person, physically, in the Microsoft offices over here in New York, over by Times Square. But I'm very pleased to have a nice panel of guest gentlemen joining us all the way from London via a Zoom connection. And so I have Mr. Peter Lee, Mr. David Tara, and Mr. Robert Millard. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hello.
Thank you. Hi, Laurence.
Well, so I have one quick question before we get started. How's the Prime Meridian doing over there?
Well, it comes right through here.
Yes.
We're right.
I haven't checked it recently, but I believe it's still there.
Yeah, I should have noted maybe not to open the show with the geography joke. But well, anyway, guys, thanks so much for doing this. I know you guys are real busy over there, but wanted to get into it a little bit. But before we get started with some of the questions, get the update from London, want to learn a little bit more about you guys. Where do you work? What do you do? And why don't we start? Robert, you put this together, so let's start with you.
Well, I'm the director of a firm called Cambridge Strategy Group. We're a management consultancy. We're based in Cambridge here in the UK. Most of our work is with law firms and other kinds of professional service firms. Increasingly, it's around topics of digital transformation and then how firms might use technology. Although we are not technologists, we're more on the business model and the strategy side. Technology is definitely the bailiwick of Peter and Dave.
All right. And Peter.
Yes. Hello. My name is Peter Lee. I'm the CEO of a business called Wavelength.law. We're the world's first regulated firm of legal engineers. So we have lawyers, data scientists, technologists, and designers solving problems and building things for people in the legal space.
And how about you, David?
Hi, so I'm David Terra, and I'm the founder and CXO of a company called Agile Elephant. We're into helping organizations get enabled with digital and transform for the new world that we're living in now. I'm here to try and get my company's name better known in the law sector, but in general, we work with all sorts of different types of organizations.
Well, fantastic. I understand you guys are at a really interesting location. So why don't you tell me about that and also include its claim to fame?
Well, it's the Westminster Law School, which is, if anybody, your listeners know London, it's a few steps from Oxford Street Station in a suburb called Fitzrovia. And it used to be a polytechnic before it became a full-blown university. And back in the 60s, it was the venue of the first ever gig of what became the band Pink Floyd. And Jimi Hendrix also had his first onstage performance here as well. So it's a very strong music background. And
one of my favorite bands, I believe Cream played there, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It was actually 1st of October 1966. Cream were playing in this room next door to where we are, which we're using for part of the hackathon. And Chaz Chandler bought this unknown American guitarist called Jimi Hendrix, asked Cream could he jam on stage with them, and amazingly they let him come up on stage.
Well, it sounds like an inspired location, and I'm hoping that's translating into some inspired developments over there. So just in terms of the 2019 Global Legal Hackathon, how's it going so far?
Going really well. We had about 100 people last night at the pitches. We had 18 ideas pitched, and 8 teams have formed out of that. I can run through the topics that they're addressing if you like.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be wonderful.
There's one team that's looking at putting an app together to quickly go through terms and conditions of contracts. There's one that's looking at mindfulness. They call it mindfulness beyond the conversation. So how to track the real state of mind of employees, especially when they're working virtually. There's a team that's looking at an automated pitch document. There's a team that's looking at creating an app for companies that find themselves under investigation by the regulators, especially the Serious Fraud Office. There's a team that's looking at developing an app that the normal public could use to take them through their options when they were faced with a legal problem, and either solve that online or kick them to the appropriate lawyer if they need a lawyer. There's a team that's looking at an online solution to put people that need help that are not English speaking in contact with volunteers who can translate from legalese into English in the first instance, and then secondly, from English into whatever other languages is in question. And you could think particularly of refugees, perhaps, and migrants from various war zones that are coming into Europe at the moment. There's a team that's looking at automated summarization of cases using machine learning. And there's a team that's looking at creating a negotiating platform that can be used by several parties simultaneously using a blockchain.
Well, I don't know how far you all are in your process, but are you seeing any early leaders arise there? Anybody that seems to be a shining star?
I think we've got some very organised teams, in particular the team that are actually doing the Terms and Conditions app and the one that's doing the wellness app. Those two seem to be the furthest advanced, but everyone's working really hard. It's kind of difficult to assess at this stage.
But Peter, David, and Robert, one of the common questions we're asking is why people are getting involved in the hackathon. And there seems to be just a wide variety of reasons cutting across the board. And I just wanted to, offer you guys the same question. Why was this such an important event that you dropped everything on your weekend and decided to participate?
Because we're crazy.
I think there's one of the trends that's coming through in the legal space in the last couple of years has been a bigger focus on innovation and creativity. And, that's captured people's imaginations. And what's really interesting to see at this hackathon in London is the demographic that's here. It's very diverse in terms of age and experience, as well as gender, which is really encouraging. And one of my team that's here, Morgan van Ermegen, she's leading the Growl efforts in London, and she's been really impressed and blown away by some of the women that are involved in the hackathon this year, which is really cool.
Does anybody else have any favorites?
Well, it's also just interesting that a couple of the Magic Circle firms, Linklaters and Freshfields, have got teams here. And I think that the fact that the hackathon has managed to attract the firms of that caliber and the other firms, I don't want to name them all, but all the firms that are involved here are well at the top of the scale in the London market. And it just shows how worthwhile this event is in the global sense.
Well, fantastic. Well, I just have two more questions for you guys before we close out. We're running a little short on time. I want to let you get back to your event. And so just put you on the spot, and you've gotten a little bit of exposure here. Do you have any early predictions for a winner? Why don't we start with Peter?
I've heard a lot of people talking about the mindfulness team that's developing an application to track that particular problem. And I've got a feeling that the topic they're addressing will capture people's imagination. So if they deliver on that, they'll probably do well.
What do you think, David?
I certainly think that they're going to be one of potentially the two outstanding ones. I'd mentioned the Freshfields team that's working on the Terms and Conditions app. I think those two are the furthest advanced, and I think they'll be vying for winner spot.
How about you, Robert?
I think it's genuinely too early to tell. I agree with both David and Peter in terms of the mindfulness app. It looks really interesting, and it's a very topical subject. But, the thing with a hackathon is you really don't know until right at the end who's come up with the best idea and who can pitch it best, because a lot goes to how well they pitch it to the judges. So I wouldn't like to predict. I think that there are 8 brilliant ideas here, and the field's wide open.
Spoken like a true diplomat.
Thankfully, we've got a really good panel of judges.
We do indeed.
All right, well, last question. So if our listeners, they want to reach out, follow up with you guys, learn a little bit more about the Global Legal Hackathon, how can they reach you? Let's start with Peter.
So a good way to reach us is via Twitter, actually. So we've got a couple of people who are monitoring that 24 hours a day, pretty much. And I guess they can also get in touch via the website.
All right, and David?
For me, it's Twitter. I'm at DT on Twitter and via the Agile Elephant website as well.
How about you, Robert?
Yeah, Twitter, that's a good avenue. So it's at Rob Millard. Or else the London Hackathon has got its own website, which is legalhackathon.london, legalhackathon.london. And that's got all of our contact details on it.
Well, we reached the end of the road for today's episode, but I want to thank our guests for joining us today, Peter, David, and Robert. I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting app. I'm Laurence Colletti, signing off from the 2019 Global Legal Hackathon. Until next time, thank you for listening.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. Subscribe via iTunes and RSS. Find us on Twitter and Facebook, or download our free Legal Talk Network app in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.